everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Spook Notes podcast, where we get academic about everything that goes bump in the night. My name is Marlena.
I'm Connor.
And on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Midsommar. Our first impressions.
First impressions of Midsommar.
That's right.
We saw this movie an hour, not even an hour ago, like half an hour ago.
This is true.
And we're recording, as we always do, right after we saw it. Didn't talk to each other yet about our opinions.
That's right.
So this is fresh.
Fresh
as it
and
can be.
ripe and uncensored.
You could say it's a new spring of our opinion.
Whoa!
Oh my god.
Alright. I just ate like half a bag worth of Reese's Pieces, so I'm pretty fucking buzzed.
Okay.
Alright,
Would
let's
you say
just...
you're high on Swedish drugs?
On Swedish fish. Swedish fish.
Okay, so...
Let's just fucking talk about this already.
Well, you know, as always, we say spoilers.
Okay, guys, you should know this by now. We're on episode 24. If you don't click on something if you see the title and don't know what it is, you know? Don't do yourself that harm. Just watch the movie and then listen to our podcast and then like and subscribe and comment and share with all your little friends.
Well, we always say before that, a spoiler-free, yes, no, would you recommend? Yes, no, would you recommend Midsommar?
Yes.
Yes, as well. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that was obvious. So yes, we will be talking about spoilers, so if you don't want it to be spoiled for you, stop listening and then watch the movie and come back.
Yes.
Okay, so spoilers. Marlena, what did you think of Midsommar?
I really liked it. I thought it did a really good job. It was different. Like, very different. Like, a different horror movie. I've never seen anything, like, done like this before. So, it was just really, like, cool to me. Like, I don't know. It was just really cool. What about you?
I liked it as well, yeah.
Okay. Well,
I didn't love it. But I did like it. I actually did. I did. I liked it a lot.
Okay. So we're not going to talk about it right now, but I think at the end we're going to have to compare it to Hereditary.
Well, I think we'll probably compare it throughout. I mean, I can say right now that I preferred Hereditary.
You son of a bitch. We were supposed to wait until the end to do that. It was supposed to be dramatic. Whatever. Okay, yeah, me too.
Yeah, you're right. This movie is different, certainly, than Hereditary, and from a lot of movies, I mean, horror movies nowadays, is certainly unique. I will say, however, it does give me definite vibes of other movies I've seen, other horror movies.
Cough, cough. The Wicker Man.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely... I would go as far as saying it's almost, I feel like, almost a modern day reimagining of that kind of story.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
how similar I thought it was.
Yeah, it is. Instead of being all, like, weird and... What is it, like Gaelic or Welsh or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, Wicker Man takes place in, like, northern England or something like that.
Yeah, and this is, like, Sweden, so...
Yeah. Okay, so what were some things that you liked about it, Ron?
I really like the use of color in this movie.
It's very colorful.
I thought that's what made it really good for me. Like, okay, obviously this movie doesn't compare to Hereditary, and as we will get into this later, it just didn't have the same scare factor. But in terms of being original, I really appreciate this movie for the use of color exclusively. Because it looks cheerful. That's the thing. It looks very cheerful.
It definitely had that big thing that a lot of people like is horror movies that are horror in the daylight. Which is certainly what this is. A lot of horror movies rely on night to scare people, which is nothing wrong with that. No. I mean, Hereditary does that a lot. But I mean, I think about movies like this, movies like Cujo. There's a lot of horror in the daylight.
Yeah. Maybe like Children of the Corn.
Children of the Corn, for sure.
And that's what I think is good, because like it kind of makes it all out in the open, because you can see it very clearly. I really like this movie because it's something that makes you think, and that was, you know, with Hereditary as well. There's a lot of symbolism in the movie, and already I just want to go ham at, like, what are all the different runes mean, and what is it about, like, the Nordic, like, folklore? Well, is it Nordic? Nordic, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Nordic
Sweden is, like, kind of Nordic? I don't know.
Okay, whatever. Swedish folklore.
Yeah.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it makes me definitely... I mean, it's definitely a movie that demands a rewatch.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, because then
Same thing with Hereditary.
Oh, yeah. It was almost better the second time I watched it.
Yeah. And it also did, like, make you kind of want to learn a little bit more about what these things mean. Because, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff in the movie that... I mean... I was like, I don't get this. I don't get what's going on. But I feel like maybe if I did learn a little bit something more about it, I would maybe understand it more. Or maybe on the other hand, it might be one of those things where you're not really supposed to get it. Like, there's an element of mystery, of the unknown there, where that makes you relate to the characters, the American characters, because just like the people coming into there, you don't really know what's going on. Mm-hmm. You don't get it all. It's all kind of like happening and you're not sure you understand, but you're, like, along for the ride.
Or maybe it's, like, up for interpretation, like, for the specific individual watching it, right? It depends, like, I could interpret the one scene differently as opposed to you, but we still don't know what the fuck is going on.
Do you have anything in mind specifically?
Like, okay, let me think. Maybe, like, the ending... Like, I get it. Like, it's kind of, like, coming to a close, like, of the season and all that shit. But I don't really get, like, the symbolism in it, specifically. And I don't really get the symbolism of the bear costume.
No, neither do I.
So, like, obviously that's something I'd have to look more into, but I don't know. Does something come to mind for you?
Well, I'm thinking of also, like things I didn't get that I feel like I would need to kind of think about it more or learn more about it. Definitely the way it seems like almost like there's almost like shared emotional experiences, like when the main character, Danny, is like breaking down in tears after she sees her boyfriend having sex with that lady. And then all the other like kind of maidens there as well are also like breaking down in tears with her. Mm-hmm. It's almost like this weird shared symbiotic relationship, because like you get the idea that by this point when she's the Mayflower Queen, that she's like connected to the earth in some way, mm-hmm. like literally physically connected. Like, you got that in her drug visions with, like, being, like, the grass growing on her.
Yeah.
And so you get the idea that maybe, like, these other ladies are connected to her in some way.
Because it's almost like a Mother Earth kind of thing, right? Like,
yeah,
they feel, like, connected to her. Like,
like, I don't know if they were, like, if the idea was that they were literally physically connected to her, or, like, if it was an emotional thing. So that was something.
Or maybe they were trying to take on her persona, right? Because they want to be like her. So they just act hysterical and try to work with her. Like, I don't know. You can interpret it in many different ways.
The ending as well, I would say, I didn't quite get it in terms of if the way they were all, like, crying or being... It looked like... I don't know if it was, like, a happy kind of religious fervor, or if it was, like... something went wrong in the ceremony.
I know, that's what I
got out of it, that maybe something went wrong and they were upset about something, but I didn't really quite know what it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then she was kind of upset because she was like on the ground screaming and stuff, but then it ends and she's kind of smiling. So again, there's just certain things that, like those specific things that I just didn't quite understand, and I feel like I would need to learn more about it or rewatch it to try to... Well,
yeah, and realistically, honestly, I would like to do an in-depth analysis about this movie, because I think we did that. Did we do that with Hereditary?
I don't think so. I think we just did the first impressions.
But it was pretty in-depth, because we were talking about a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And Hereditary definitely...
It's more surface.
It is, well, yes.
Yes,
I mean,
no.
It does have, like, a lot of that deeper meaning, but that deeper meaning is more readable. It's more... You can interpret it more easily, because the story is more straightforward, and it's more contained, whereas Midsommar is a very out there kind of story. It's it's a story about cultures and the differences between people and things like that.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing I really appreciated this movie for. Honestly, okay, it wasn't really scary. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
there were a few parts that kept you on edge or made you kind of tense, very tense. But you're right. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a traditional scary movie in the way that Hereditary was.
Yeah, like there was not a lot of jump scares, a lot of paranormal stuff. It was very like practical.
Yes.
Like, very... Okay, obviously
it was more about unnerving you. And making you...
Uneasy.
Because that's where the characters felt. Because, again, it's like that you don't really know what's going on. And that's why you're unnerved.
That's true. But at the same...
It's the fear of the unknown.
But it's like, I wasn't even really looking at it from the perspective of the main characters. I was kind of just trying to understand, like, the culture. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there are cultures out there that do sacrifices and stuff. And, like... You know, us being foreigners looking in on that, obviously we find it a little bit strange because we're not accustomed to it. Especially like burial practices in, like, you know, the Middle East, or not Middle East, like Eastern cultures like Vietnam and stuff like that. Cambodia, they have a lot of, you know, obscure practices as opposed to people in North America. And I just didn't think it was like that scary. It was very interesting, though.
What I got out of it was that some of their stuff, like I think back to the very first of the, like, ceremonies that you see, which is the two old people and the way they the way they ended their lives by jumping off that cliff.
They offered themselves up.
But they're also, like, it's the idea that they don't want to, like, go to old age and be, like, you know, broken down where their body can't do anything. They're just living for the sake of living and that kind of idea. Mm-hmm. They wanted to end it while they still have some idea left. And then it's the idea of recycling and rebirth and the fact that now their names are given to these newborn babies.
Yeah.
So, like, that almost makes sense when they explain it. And, like, when they kind of like, oh, no, it's this, this, this. But then, I mean, it gets to a point where I think that the movie is trying to say that, you know, while this stuff may seem different than us, and while we may be able to be like, oh, it's just different cultures, like, it's definitely fucked up. Like, it's definitely like...
you can kind of justify that when the old man jumps off the rock formation, breaks his legs, and they, like, smash his face in with a hammer.
And they take turns.
Yeah, so that, like,
But, I mean, even the ending, I mean, like, I think the sacrifices are where it gets to be too far, and it's like, you know, there's a certain stage where... It is no longer like, oh, this is a different culture than us. It's like, no, this is, like, wrong, and this is fucked up.
See, I don't know. Maybe I'm just really twisted, but I would beg to differ. Because I can justify, like, live sacrifice as well. Obviously, it is wrong.
But not against the person's will.
Well, yeah.
Because, I mean, we're talking about the boyfriend, obviously.
Okay, I thought we were talking about the live ones. I was like, they willingly wanted to die for...
Yeah, but the boyfriend was alive.
Yeah, but he was basically a vegetable, so it's like...
But that's only because they drugged him.
Whatever, he was half bear. Half dead bear.
And obviously they do murder people. Like, they murder the two other friends, they murder the two English people.
But I guess the only reason why they're murdering them is just because they're doing stuff that's wrong and disrespectful against their culture. Which, in sense, yes, is very wrong. Like, for instance, if I went into... Catholic church, and when I got the host, I don't know, spit it out or made a face or something like that. These people in the church are not going to, like, freaking
cut you open and hang you
me
up
from the ceiling. Yeah. So obviously that's wrong, but I guess they're just trying to get square with them.
No, I think it is that, like, I think what it's trying to say is there comes a point in the learning of people's cultures, because, I mean, that's what these people were there for. There was obviously the one grad student who was writing his thesis about it, and then the other one who was obviously aping off of him, and they were there to learn about it, but there comes a point where it's wrong.
Like, ignorance is bliss, kind of. Like, it's okay to not know everything, and you shouldn't be discriminated against or killed for not knowing or respecting the culture.
Yeah, and not only just that, but just, like, some cultures, you know, are just, like, they're wrong in their practices, and it's like, it is a horror movie, I think.
Well, yeah, especially like ISIS is a good example, because that's kind of like...
Well, yeah, I mean, they're terrorists, for sure.
Well, a terrorist, but it's an extremist viewpoint of a particular religion, right? Like, being Muslim, like, you can have different... I don't know too much about religion, so hopefully I don't offend anybody, but, like, you can have different denominations, different beliefs and practices, all kind of under the same religion. Same goes for Christianity, right? Because you have Catholicism, you have Presbyterian, Lutheran, like, all these different things, and they're tweaked just a little bit. So maybe this movie, like Midsommar, is kind of like, well, it's definitely pagan based, but they're just kind of taking the extreme view of that. But it's not right. But for them, it's right. Mm-hmm. You know? Do you feel?
Yeah, and like they do say, like in this movie before they even go to Sweden, that like these people are basic. I mean, they are basically a cult. Like it's definitely a cult movie.
Oh yeah.
In a sense that like they mentioned that this is just a small community in Sweden, and it's not like this isn't like a Swedish thing that like all Swedish people do. It's like specific to this group of people.
I was almost getting like Jonestown vibes too.
Well, yeah, I mean it's definitely it kind of combines that folk horror kind of subgenre and also the cult subgenre as well. Yeah. So, what were some other things you liked about it?
I really liked the gore and the violence in this.
It was not often, but when it was effective.
Pretty good. Like, honestly, the theater we went to, we didn't expect it to be that busy.
It was really packed.
Yeah, surprisingly, which is great because
it's always better to see a horror movie with an audience.
Well, it's interesting for us because we're kind of, like, weird and usually we don't react the same way as normal, mundane people react to horror movies. So it's just, like, really kind of, it's interesting to see other people react. And when the violence happened, they're like, oh my god. Meanwhile, I'm just like, yeah, get it, you know?
Yeah, no, and yeah, like, I think that there was, you could probably count how many scenes of gore on one hand there are. Like, there's really not a lot, but when it is, like I said, it's effective. And well done, like, realistic looking, which is nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I would say, like, the most unnerving parts of this movie are not even the parts with gore, it's more like, just like...
the sounds?
I mean, I think what Ari Aster, the director, is really good at is really shedding light on the worst parts of the average human experience. Like, things like we all experience. And that's why, like, in Hereditary, like, I mean, I'm not saying everybody experiences the loss of a child, but, like, the most scary part of that movie to me, aside from maybe the ending, is when Toni Collette, like the mom's character, finds out that Charlie's dead.
Oh yeah, and you can hear her screams, and it's just like so genuine, and you're like, oh my god, this is awful.
And that's why, like, same thing in this movie, like, I mean, there was definitely some really scary parts in Sweden itself, but one of the scariest parts of the whole movie to me was just the multiple suicide at the beginning of the movie when Danny's sister kills herself and kills the parents, and then just Danny's reaction to that.
Yeah.
Like, that to me was probably one of the scariest parts of the whole movie. And that's just, like, shedding a light on, like, I mean, obviously, like, a multiple suicide like that is not something that happens to everybody, but the loss of a loved one is.
Yeah, or loved ones are feeling, you know...
depressed.
Well, no, not even so much depressed, but just feeling alone. Just feeling like you don't have anybody to turn to. Because that was kind of around the same time that she was worried about her boyfriend, like, leaving her, and she's...
And her boyfriend's not really the best person either.
No, like, he's a total asshole. So I think this movie does a really good job of kind of, like, paralleling that, because you have her feeling ultimately alone as a character, as opposed to feeling completely, like... encapsulated by this community.
Well, at the end, she kind of finds that community.
Yeah, and then she's happy because she's like, she feels like she belongs to something. She has people to fall back onto. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, I kind of got a nice little good feeling at the end. I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, she's actually happy.
With the death of all of her friends.
That's fine, you know, you just gotta lose the bad ones.
Yeah.
But no, one thing I really did appreciate about this movie was the use of sound. This was also noted in Hereditary as well, and it did the same thing for me. And I don't know what it is about Ari Aster. What he must play with the frequencies or something like that, because it always makes me feel like borderline a little bit ill, just with the use of sound. And that is so cool, and I love that.
Like, how do you mean?
Like, sometimes, like, when the music was playing in either Hereditary or Midsommar, just the way the music was playing almost made me kind of feel sick. You know what I'm saying? I feel sick majority of the time anyway, but, like, this especially. Like, more notably, like, the parts where she's screaming, and she's kind of going like I'm like, oh my god, if this girl throws up, I'm gonna be dead. But like, it's that kind of stuff, that use of sound that's really really good. You know, for someone like me, I really, really appreciate it, because that is what scares me. Nice. I don't like that. Yeah. What about you?
Well, one thing that I think was my favorite thing about this entire movie, and I think the thing that Ari Aster is best at, I mean, I think that he is amazing with the camera. I think that he does things with the camera that, like, I mean, this might be a little bit hyperbolic and a little bit, well, not hyperbolic, but a little bit maybe of too much of a comparison. But, like, he honestly does remind me in the way he uses the camera of Kubrick.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, I mean, he does so many different tricks with it. Like, there's so many specific moments I could point to. Like, for example, I really liked the ones... Sorry?
The car?
Well, when the car turns upside down, I think that's so cool, because it kind of like gives you... It makes you that feeling of when you're on a long road trip and you're kind of just like, ugh, like, can this be over? And then when you finally get to that point, you kind of get up out of your seat, or you like raise your head up again to pay attention again. Or even another small moment that I really liked was when the boyfriend Christian discovers the body hanging, and then the guy surprises him and blows like the smoke in his face or whatever, and then he like goes unconscious, and then he's looking, and then the guy closes his eyes and half of the camera lens turns off, really, and then cool. The other half.
Yeah.
So it's like you it's not just like a regular POV shot, like you really feel like his eyelids are your eyelids.
Yeah. No,
and then
absolutely.
as his one eyelid is closing, your eyelid is too.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. I mean, even something as simple as, there's a scene early on when Danny is confronting her boyfriend about not telling him about Sweden, and they have a conversation that is just one long take where it's Danny talking and you see her, and then there's a mirror next to her, and you see his reflection in the mirror, so you get both sides without the camera ever having to go into two cameras or move at all. Yeah. It's just static for like a long period of time, but you can see both actors.
That's true.
Which is really interesting.
That is true. Also, one thing I really appreciate was the use of pictures in this movie. Because, you know, you have the pictures in the apartment, you have the pictures kind of in, like, the village, and I don't know if were you really paying attention to what was going on in the back? Like, a little bit. Like, I could tell that, like, all the pictures in the background of all the buildings, like, a lot of them depicted, like, really horrific deaths and things like that. But it kind of foreshadowed what was happening. Oh, yeah, a lot of it, yeah. Yeah, because, like, you'd have the picture, like, of Christian... Or you'd have the shot of Christian, and in the background there was the picture of like the whole like sex scene. Or there was the one time when he was looking at the bear that was burning. Exactly. So it's kind of like, I like that. You know, I like that because it makes me think, oh well, how are they going to do that? You know? Yeah. So I think that's what Ari Aster is best at. That's my favorite thing about his movies, is that he uses the camera really inventively to not only do interesting things, but to do different things, and to do those things to make you either feel on the feet of the characters, and thus make you feel the horror more, or to put you on edge. Yeah. Another thing that I liked was when they did take the drugs. Mm-hmm. I know how the whole thing was kind of swirling. The whole screen was swirling. But then it was like, but sometimes it was like only the stuff in the background and not the stuff in the foreground. Yeah. Or the way people's faces would change and kind of warp. That was interesting, because a lot of this movie does have to do with like the effects of drugs, and because that's how kind of like the cult kind of subdues its victims and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I thought the way that he shot that was very interesting, because it did make you feel disoriented, just like the characters were. Yeah. Now let me ask you something. Did you expect more violence and more gore out of this movie? Well, here's the thing. With this movie, I mean, like I said, it definitely got shades of Wicker Man. Yeah. And the whole thing, the most famous thing about Wicker Man is the ending, right? Yeah. When he burns in the giant wicker statue. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus Christ. So, because you know and were knowledgeable of that movie, and the kind of movie that this is, the entire time you're waiting for, like, the other foot to drop, as it were. You're waiting for something really bad to happen. Like shit to happen. And it does. Yeah. And it does. But you're waiting for that. But it does, like, as we mentioned when we were coming out of it, I think the only thing we actually did mention is that
this is actually a really long movie. And maybe I'll get into that.
But it didn't even feel like it. That's the thing. It really did not. And I don't know if that's kind of like funny. Well, it is funny. It's ironic because in the movie, like, time is really not measured. And we didn't really measure the time. Whatever. Okay, yeah.
I will disagree with you on that. That's one thing I'm definitely going to disagree with you on.
Okay.
To me, it actually did feel long. Like, I felt the time.
Okay.
To me, it felt long. And I'll get into that more when we're talking about the cons. But, yeah, it's definitely a slow burn. It takes a while to get to that moment where the other foot does drop.
Yeah.
Just like in Wicker Man. So, yeah.
Well, do you have anything else nice to say about the movie?
I mean, I have a lot. I mean, I could go on, like, and again, I definitely feel like it needs a rewatch. The acting was great. I think that Ari Aster does a good job of working with his actors to get those really raw emotions. Like, I thought the girl who played Danny was really good. Mm-hmm. You really felt in her shoes. I thought the guy who played the boyfriend, Christian, was an asshole.
I really liked, oh my god, he's also in a freaking Black Mirror.
Bandersnatch Will Poulter?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good too. I even liked, one person who I think, like, really did an understated performance but was really good was, the guy who played their Swedish friend, like the guy who brought them.
I liked him.
I thought he did a good job because the entire time, because you at least think you know what's going to happen, you know that he's hiding something, but he does a good job of really being like, oh, you don't know, it's okay, and like...
Well, he's calming. Like, that's the thing. He could tell me, like, I'm going to be burnt up in a bear costume. I'd be like, okay, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. So, there was definitely some good acting, and I think that, like, that's another similarity between Hereditary and this movie is that Ari Aster does a good job of getting those performances out of the actors. And I'm glad that I saw this movie. Yeah. Because it shows that, like, Hereditary wasn't just a one-off. Like, Ari Aster, I think, really proved himself with this movie because sometimes there are those directors who make one good movie and that's kind of it. Yeah. But through this one, I can already tell that he's like...
He's a solid director.
And he's one that I want to see more.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I was really thinking about this in the theater. He might be, like, in my top 3 directors of all time.
I wouldn't say that.
Why?
I still haven't seen enough.
But here's the thing. It's like, for the movies that I did see, it almost, like, does it for me. Like, because, like, I can set them apart. They're so different. They're so memorable that I can set them apart and be like, yeah, I know who directs this. You can tell who directs it. Mm-hmm. Same way you would Stanley Kubrick, who's also in my top 3. Mm. But...
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the cons. So what didn't you like about this movie?
I did feel, in certain parts, it was a little slow. There was probably, I'd say, 3/4 of the way through the movie, it was starting to get, like, alright, like, is shit gonna happen? Or, like, what's gonna, you know?
It stayed on things. Yeah. It stayed on things. Like, I'm thinking, like the scene where they're dancing around the thing, like, obviously that's a pivotal scene, but that's a long scene too. Like, it stays on that. Even, like
some of the dinner scenes.
Some of the dinner scenes are long, it stays on it. Yeah. Some of the scenes where they're just in, like, their house where they sleep, it stays on it. Like, I mean, sorry, not to take away from what you said, but, like, one of my biggest cons is that it was too long. Yeah. I think that, honestly, you could take out maybe, like, half an hour of this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And make it better, if anything. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff with, like, their, like, schooling, like, oh, I want to do this as my thesis. No, I want to do it, where it's, like, it does pay off because that's the whole reason why the one character, I think his name is Josh, does go into that, like, sacred place and takes the pictures, and that leads to him getting murdered. Yeah. But that side plot was, like, I feel like you could cut that down. Yeah. I was like, well, I don't really care about who's doing what thesis, or, like, then it's like, there's, like, literally a whole scene is devoted to being like, oh, we need to find out if the elders will let us, and, like, we can't use the names and the location stuff, and it's like, I don't care.
I feel like, I just want to see the violence.
I was more interested in Danny and her character and her journey. Oh, yeah. Than I was, like, these other characters. I thought that, another one of the things I didn't like is I like Will Poulter as an actor. I thought that some of his humor in it was kind of forced, like sometimes. And again, if you cut out some of that stuff, I mean, again, like it's hard because like I also think that it does pay off well. Like I think when you see him, or like I don't even know when the other guy goes into the room to take the pictures, and then like you see like the guy coming to him. Is that actually like that funny character, or is that like somebody wearing his face?
See, I thought it was somebody wearing his face.
That's what I thought too, because it kind of looked like that.
Yeah.
And then later on when you see him, it's like not really his body, it's just like he's stuffed with straw, and then he has like the Jester's hat on, and then it's like his face. So that's what I thought.
See, I was a little bit confused by that, because I thought it was like when they were doing that whole like, hey Danny, who do you want to sacrifice and all this shit, I thought that was her boyfriend. I thought that was Christian for the longest time. And then I saw him like walk in, and I'm like, oh, wait, what the actual hell?
What do you mean?
Like, okay, when they bring the guy with the Jester's hat in, I thought that character was her boyfriend.
No.
Just because the way it flowed, the way it was shot, because she was looking at her boyfriend last, and then you see this guy wielding with straw in his mouth, and I just thought,
yeah, but him. You also see him when they're preparing the bear.
Like yeah, but that was after. Whatever.
Yeah, like. Sorry?
I'm trying to think. What are some other things?
Like some other cons.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is there were, not often, but there were a few moments in this movie where I think that the way that it was edited, or maybe just the way it was shot or framed or something like that, maybe the way the characters were acting, I think there was also some unintentional humor.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Especially the whole part, like, where the women are, like, wailing and shit.
Yeah.
Like, it was borderline funny.
No, it wasn't borderline funny. It was definitely funny. And I don't think it was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's one thing. I think with those scenes, they could have made it a little bit more unnerving.
Like, I think, you know what I think of? I think of the very end of Hereditary, when you see all, like, the naked old people in that cabin up top. That could be funny, because there's a bunch of naked old people in the cabin.
But the way they filmed it.
Exactly, but the way they filmed it, it's not. It's
you're
really
right.
creepy and unnerving. And this, again, like, it's hard to say for sure, but I'm fairly certain he didn't mean that to be funny, but it comes across as humorous.
That's true. But maybe that was his intent. Because the way we view different cultures and stuff and their practices is almost funny to us. Like, oh, why would they do that?
Yeah.
Like, why are they going up and telling this old man about their sins? Oh, so dumb.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe.
You can go back and forth on that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
But yeah, there was a few parts where I think that it was unintentionally funny, which kind of sucks.
I mean, I had a good time.
No, me too. Like, and these are small things, and I think I'm being a little hard on this movie simply because I know that Ari Aster can do really well. Like, I think of Hereditary, and that's a very dark movie. Like, I don't think there's really very much comedy in that movie.
No.
As opposed to this, which does have a little bit more comedy.
Yeah. But I think that's good because it shows like diversity in his ability to direct and what he expects from his actors and what kind of overall vibe he wants to create with the movie. Because Hereditary is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I think it does an excellent job. And a lot has to be attributed just straight to the acting, and being very serious and very emotion focused. And this one was focused on the emotions as well. I mean, Midsommar, but it was different in a way. It was like kind of overcoming sadness and depression, like learning to accept yourself and to laugh at all the demons that once bugged you. Like, I don't know. That's the vibe I got from it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Do you have any other negatives?
Like, here's the thing. Obviously, I would have liked a little bit more gore, especially at the end of the movie, but I feel like it did a really good job of kind of just sticking it to the parts that it was meant to be, as opposed to just, like, throwing it at the end because it's the climax of the movie. I don't know whether or not that's a pro or a con, but can you kind of see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Because I feel like in certain cultures like that, obviously the sacrifices and stuff that they do are extreme, but it's not like they're just slinging bodies left and right, and well, they are draping them from the ceiling, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like a full-blown bloodbath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
I have one more con, I will say. Oh. And this goes back to something we were talking about before, which is the not understanding things.
Yeah.
There were certain things in the movie that I thought were, like... Because definitely, like, one of the things that makes this movie scary is that it unnerves you because you don't understand everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. And I would say that there were certain parts in the movie where I feel like maybe he was just putting weird shit just to put weird shit in the movie. Like, it was, like, never paid off or something like that. Like, I think of... some of the drugs I don't really get the payoff of. Like, you know, her seeing her mom in the crowd that one time when she gets crowned as the Mayflower Queen. I don't really get that. Like, and I feel like it doesn't really pay off. It's just like, ooh, let's put this weird, creepy thing in there just because.
Well, I think she was just haunted by the ghosts of her past.
A little bit, but I don't know why it was in that specific moment and why it was just the mom. I don't know, so like that kind of stuff. And the reason, again, I'm being a little hard on it is because I think back to Hereditary, and there's a lot of weird shit in Hereditary, but it all pays off at the end.
True.
You're like, oh, why is, like, Charlie, like, making these weird, like, no, not that, but the way she, like, makes the weird, like,
figurines.
Figurines, you're like, oh, well, that's weird. That's just a weird, stupid thing they put in there. But it pays off at the end, because, like, that's how they put the crown on her, and that's how she looks at the end. So,
but here's
in Hereditary, they pay off, and this, I feel like, some of the stuff doesn't.
But here's the thing. We only know that it pays off because we've done research on the movie. Maybe, like, if
I don't think you really need to do that much research, though, to get it.
But I don't know. Maybe some of the symbols in the movie, like all the runes, like, have a meaning. And, like, maybe, like, when she did see her mother, like, she was surrounded by all these women, but yet she was lacking somebody who was important, who was also a woman figure. But then again, you can kind of think, like, to her sister. Why was her sister not there?
Yeah. And
I don't know, man.
Yeah, so, like, that's my only other con. But, I mean, yeah, so, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think I'm just going to let this one,
Do you want to get into overall final thoughts?
Settle. Sure.
So, I mean, overall, like, I named a few of the things that I didn't like about some of the cons. But at the end of the day, it was a good movie. I liked it. I definitely want to rewatch it. I would definitely recommend it to people. Mm-hmm. And comparing it to Hereditary, I did like Hereditary more, but that's because I feel like Hereditary was more of a straight horror movie than this.
Yeah.
I feel like you mentioned before, I agree with you, that this is not as much of a straight horror movie. It's definitely a horror movie. Like, it definitely has a lot of horrific elements, but it's also a little bit different as well. And I mean, I liked it. I thought it was really good. I am excited. And here's the thing, even though I didn't like it as much as Hereditary, I still am excited to see more from this director. Like, I think he's so interesting, and I just can't wait to see more from him, because I think as a director, he's really, really good.
Yeah. And he's also fairly young, too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Gives me a lot of hope, you know? Maybe one day I'll be as good as him.
Yeah. One thing actually I did mention that I did like about it is I think because he also wrote it, I think a lot of his dialogue is really good because it makes it believable. Like, because he's young and he's writing, like, the main cast is, like, younger characters, their dialogue feels real, and it feels like not made up.
Yep.
It feels like real dialogue between friends and between, like, a boyfriend and girlfriend at that age.
And I think that's very important just because you can feel more connected with the characters.
And another thing, actually, I will say I did like about this movie compared to Hereditary is because me and you are closer to the ages of these characters rather than the mother and Hereditary and stuff, their struggles felt a little bit more similar to, like, things we've gone through and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think that is really good because it helps you connect with these characters. And like I said, I really did connect to Danny, and I thought that her story in this was really good.
Yeah.
So,
that's good.
You got anything else left to say?
No, I'm pretty sure I just kind of exhausted all my thoughts. Like I said before, I would like to do more research on this movie and just kind of, find all the little Easter eggs in it. I think it'd be really cool.
So should we give our final ratings?
Sure. How many
How many
drug trips?
How many drug drinks, spiked weird drinks out of 10 would you give this?
I'd give it, oh my god, I thought I had a solid rating in my head, and then it kind of changed throughout. I'd give it fuck it, I'm gonna give it a 9.
9?
Yeah.
I give it an 8.
Okay. I was borderline gonna say 8.75, and I was like, God, you know what?
No, you shouldn't even give halves. I only ever give whole numbers.
I'm too nice. Okay, then I give it a 9. I think you did a really good job, but it was just there was a small amount that it could have been done differently.
Yeah.
AKA the timing or like the length of the movie.
Yeah. And again, same thing with everything you just said, and for those things. But I think we both really liked it, which was awesome, and I think we both want to rewatch it. Yeah.
Honestly, this was one of my more anticipated movies of the year, and I'm not let down at all. So
awesome.
Yay.
Sweet. Well, there you go, guys. Those are our opinions of Midsommar.
That's right.
Marlena, where can they find us?
You can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, all under the sick handle Spook Notes. And if you have any questions, comments, and hopefully no concerns, you can shoot us up an email at spooknotes@gmail.com. Let us know what you guys think about this movie, and if you have any criticisms or comments for the flick.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, Connor. As always.
Wow.
My brain just stopped working. All right.
And as always, don't forget to cite the Spook Notes. Bye.